You know, we were just studying about, my wife and I have been reading about Gideon. And how Gideon, when he followed the Lord's plans, he did just fine. And the Lord blessed him in a marvelous way, gave him marvelous victories when he did what the Lord told him to do. But as time went along, he started following his own plans. And that's when he went astray and led Israel astray, back where they were before. Full circle. Gideon. I don't know how many of you, do you have the Morning Watch book of this last year? What's the name of that book, honey? It's a morning book by Ellen White. Anyway, we've been reading it. Every morning after breakfast we read it. And we've been reading about Gideon, and this came to pass, and then this text came into my mind. And God is really wonderful. I want to share something with you today that was very, very important to me. I didn't know what I was doing. When we got married, I didn't have a clue what to do, but I thought I had to make my plans. You know, when you go to college, they tell you to make plans and follow those plans. And I was dumb enough to believe that. I had a friend I went to school with, good old T.K. Williams. I called him our sea daddy. He'd been in the Navy, became a Christian. So he came to Andrews University, and he was about 5 years older than us. And that's like over the hill at that age, you know. So we called him Sea Daddy because we thought he had so much more wisdom than the rest of us youngsters. And we had a good time. TK planned the next 20 years of his life. I said, what? How do you do that? How do you know what to do? And he says, well, you got to be smart. But he did. He says, now I'm taking the ministerial course. I'm not going to complete it. I'm going to go out and teach church school for 3 years. Then I'm coming back and finish up my MDiv and all that stuff. And then I'm going to do such and such and such, and I'm going to get my doctorate, and I'm going to be a chaplain. And he did. He did all the stuff that he said. I said, this is amazing how you can figure all that out. But he did. Well, I was lost. I said, boy, that's way beyond me. I don't know what to do with my life. But I was still making plans for myself. When we got married, you know, my wife, she didn't know what was going on. She just followed, along. And we were teaching church school. And then I got out of that because that wasn't really my calling. I didn't want to do that. And so I went canvassing again. I could sell books. I could talk, sell books. And I did. I sold books. But every week it was the same old thing. I had to go back down and get used to meeting and going to the doors. And I hated that. It was terrible. I thought, this isn't if this is my calling, if this is what I'm supposed to do, I should really enjoy what I'm doing, But I battled with it, So I did that for a while, and that didn't work out. My wife was teaching school, and I said, we're going to move. And I decided to go to Chicago. I had a good friend, Bob Schwartz, down. Remember Pat Schwartz I was telling you about? My buddy that told me about my wife, told me that she should be my wife. Well, his dad, he didn't like his dad. He had a lot of money at one time, and he lost it all, and he was angry because he lost all that money. And he didn't like his dad. I said, what's the matter with you? He's the neatest guy. You've got a wonderful father. He's spiritual. He's funny. He's a lot of fun. And you don't like him. I said, well, if you don't like him, I'll take him. And he says, he's yours. I said, thank you, he's mine. He's my dad. From now on, it was Dad Schwartz. And I spent more time with him. He would counsel with me, pray with me. Oh, what a blessing he was. Pat didn't want him, man. And I took him. So he was a real blessing to me. So I wanted to be with with Bob down there in Chicago. And he was canvassing, but he was kind of in the same boat I was. He didn't really enjoy it either, but he wanted to do something for God. Well, that didn't work out. And it was a mess. And so my wife was my only lifesaver, man. She got a job, and she was supporting the project, down there. Here I am sitting there wondering what to do, not wanting to go out and knock on doors. And she was doing fine. In fact, she was doing so well, they kept promoting her till she was sitting up in the front desk, man. I didn't know if the guy had his eye on her or if he liked her work, I wasn't quite sure, But then Mommy started to enlarge territory. She was getting farther and farther away from her work. Her stomach was getting bigger. And she was pregnant. So she couldn't continue working. So she had to quit. And I thought, now what am I doing? Who's going to support me now? So I was really frustrated. And I just said, Lord, what's the answer to this thing? This is not working right. And so I started to read. I read largely from the book Ministry of Healing. If you want a cross-section of Ellen White's writings, Ministry of Healing, it covers so many different topics on health and home and school and relationships and medical work and educational work. It's phenomenal. This is a great book. Take it home and read it from cover to cover. Well, I was reading. And in the last chapter, there's a section, Help on Daily Living. So practical, so beautiful. It is our character and our experience that determine our influence upon others. It's what we are, who we are. But I was struggling with what to do with my life. Let's see if I can find that page. Yeah, it started out on page 473. And I'm reading this and I'm just bewildered. And it says, our plans are not always God's plans. I said, yeah? Is that right? He may see that it's best for us or for his cause to refuse our very best intentions. I said, how do you do that, Lord? As he did in the case of David. Well, what did he do with David? So I'm reading. But this has got my interest. So I'm not supposed to plan? Is that what you're trying to say? And this started getting interesting. And so I read on, and all practical lessons. And then on page 478, it says, and this is dynamite. Fasten your seatbelt. Plans for the future. Many are unable to make definite plans for the future. I says, tell it to me again. Their life is unsettled. Oh, man. They cannot discern the outcome of affairs, and this often fills them with anxiety and unrest. And I said, this is amazing. My name should be on this. Let us remember that the life of God's children in this world is a pilgrim life. Well, I thought I was a pilgrim. We have not wisdom to plan our own lives. It is not for us to shape the future. By faith, Abraham, when he was called to go out to a place where he should afterward receive for an inheritance, he obeyed. He went out not knowing where he was going. Well, that doesn't sound very good, does it? But that appealed to me. Less responsibility and let God do it, Christ in his life made no plans for himself. He accepted God's plans for him, and day by day, the Father unfolded his plans. So should we depend upon God, just like Jesus, that our lives may be the simple outworking of his will. As we commit our ways to him, he will direct our steps. did that sound good? Doesn't that sound good? Wouldn't you like to be directed by God? Too many in making planning for a brilliant future make an utter failure. Oh, I said, man, that's me. Let God plan for you. I says, all right, Lord, you're going to have your chance with me. And as a child, trust to the guidance of him who will keep the feet of his saints. God never leads his children otherwise than they would choose to be led if they could discern the end from the beginning and the glory of the purpose for which they are fulfilling as workers with him. Oh, I said, why haven't I read this before? I'm going to turn my life over to God. And if the consequences are not too acceptable, tough. He's to blame. I needed a big brother to blame, for the lousy life I was living. But this changed my life. I said, that's it, God. From now on, you got a fool on your hands, and you got to do something with him because I don't know what to do with him. But that relieved me. That was truth for me. And I said, all right, Lord, from now on, I'm not making any decisions. You're going to make the decisions. I'm not going anywhere unless you tell me to go. I was telling this to one of my friends in college. I went to Carl Westman. Oh, how nice. Is he going to come down and tell you what to do? I said, I don't know what he's going to do. I said, that's his problem, man. He's the one who makes the claim. I didn't make this claim. This is inspired writing, brother. And I said, he makes the claim. I will plan for your life if you let me, if you will allow me. So I said, that's his problem. I'm not even going to worry about it. All I know is that if he wants me to do something, he'll have to tell me some way. So I had a job. I got a job. I finally had to support my family. So I got a job working at the Simplicity Pattern Company down in Niles. Oh, I was in Chicago. And TK, my sea daddy, he calls me, he says, Crary, what are you doing down there in Chicago? I said, I don't know. He says, you tell me. He said, you need to be back here in school. I said, I don't want to go back to school. I said, I don't learn anything in those classes. That doesn't mean anything to me. He says, well, you don't know what you're doing, and I'm coming to get you, so get yourself ready. Because I got a trailer, and we're going to load you up and bring you back here. I said, well, where am I supposed to live? He says, you can move in with us. We got a whole basement. We got sheets hang up. We can hang up a few more sheets, and you can stay with us till we find a place. I said, oh, man, I don't know. He said, I'm on my way. So old TK showed up down there, and what are you going to do, man? I didn't want to go back to college. And he loaded me up, and we moved back to college. We finally found a place, for our little baby was born there. And my wife was tickled pink. There was an understanding that was going around those days that it is God's will that you go to school. No questions about it. You don't know what to do, you're supposed to be in school. Now I never read that. And I say, well, what page was that on? Show me where it was, Well, nobody could produce it. I even asked some professors about it, and they said, yeah, that's right. That's what you need to be doing. But I said, can you show me from the Word of God that that's the way it should be, I was a little ornery and skeptical at that time. And, nobody could show it, but I found something. I read everything about education you could read. I went through every bit of counsel that there was. And I found in Fundamentals of Education statement, it says, don't take everyone's suggestion to go back to school. Seek the Lord's will in the matter, and the Lord may have another plan for you. I says, I hope he's got something in mind, because I don't want to go back to school. And so I never could keep an appointment there too well, I remember walking down campus at Andrews University, and I'd see the kids up there waving. What are they doing up there? Oh, man, I thought I had a lot of time. I skipped class. I forgot about class. And they were telling me, get up to class, Crary. You're going to flunk if you don't get through. Well, I did get a perfect record that year. That was the year before I left. I flunked every class. And I didn't care. I wasn't really getting much out of it anyway. So that's when I went back and I got the job teaching church school. They didn't know about that. And I never told them. But here we were. And so I used to walk up and down the corridors of Simplicity Patter Company, and I collected their timesheets. Then I'd go back to the office and figure out, how much they make an hour for the work they were doing. And then during the break time, I'd walk down those dark corridors and I'd just pray, Lord, what a fool you got in your hands. I said, I don't know what to do with my life, but I want to serve you. I want to be useful in your hand. I want to be a part of your work. But I don't know what to do, but please help me. And I usually just beg the Lord to direct my life. And I can remember one night walking down that corridor, and there was a little place where you could go out and look at the stars, get the fresh air. And I was up there looking at the stars, remembering the stars I looked at way back in Wisconsin Academy when I was about 15. And I heard a voice speaking to me again. And what had happened was a bunch of young people had just graduated from Andrews, my age. They were graduating and I was still in the first class, And they said, Crary, we're going to that school, Highlandale Academy. It's an old school, but it needs changing around, and we're going to go in there and really make a success out of it. Why don't you come and join us? Oh, man, that sounded great. I'd love to do that. I would be the first one to jump on something like that. And I said, no. I said, I would love to, but God's got to tell me to do it. God's got to let me know that that's what he wants me to do. I'm not making these decisions anymore. And I mean it. That's it. End of story. Well, I was out there that night, and he spoke to me, and he said, son, I want you to go to Highlandale. And it was the same voice that had spoke to me before. And I said, well, when do you want me to go, Lord? He said, right away. Well, people thought I was crazy and hearing things, but it was the same voice that had spoken to me before. And if I'm wrong, I'm way out on left wing. But if that's God's voice and he's speaking to me, I better be sure to do it. So I went home and told my wife, and she was so happy to be back at school. And her husband was finally going to get his act together. And finally graduate so he'd finally get out and do something. I don't know if that's what she thought, but she could have thought that pretty easily. But anyway, I said, honey, we're going to Highlandale. What for? I said, well, God just told me we needed to go up there. And she started to cry. So here we go again, man. She thought we were off. We got this little baby, man. We loaded him up in the car, and we drove up to Highlandale. And they said, oh, man, we're so glad you're going to come and join us. We need help. So I said, okay, here I am, man. Well, that was one of the greatest blessings of my life. I found out what a stinker I was. I found out that my character needed a lot of changing. We used to get in big debates. See, when you're all peers, you don't want to take orders from anybody because you figure you're equal. You're all on the same level. You're just smart as the next guy. And so you're just as right as they are. And of course that differs from time to time. We used to have some big knockdown drag-ups in the meetings. Boy, I tell you, some of the stuff we did up there that year, we had our hands full. We had a bunch of kids. They were a bunch of rebels. And we had our hands full. But it was a great blessing because I learned a lot about myself. And it cooled my jets. But I read, while I was there, and we were there 2 years, weren't we, honey? I read every book on education. I read everything that God, and I read something that's really interesting. Elder Sutherland, who was president of Madison College, asked for several statements found in the Christian Educator, and so they sent them to him. And these were part of them. Listen to this. Education as it is conducted in the schools of today is one-sided and therefore a mistake. If they'd asked me, I would have told them. As a purchase of the Son of God, we are His property, and everyone should have an education in the school of Christ. Hey man, where's that school? I like that idea. You know, Jesus conducting a school. The school of Christ. Wise teachers should be chosen for our schools. Teachers have to deal with human minds, and they are responsible to God to improve upon these minds the necessity of knowing Christ as a personal Savior. But no one can truly educate God's purchased possession unless he himself has learned in the school of Christ. So how are you going to tell anybody else how to join the school of Christ if you haven't? If you haven't learned in the school of Christ and learned how to teach. I must tell you, from the things given to me, I know that much time and money are spent by students acquiring a knowledge that is as chaff to them, for it does not enable them to help their fellow men or form characters that will fit men to unite with the saints and angels in the higher school. In useless knowledge, the mind should be carefully and wisely taught to dwell on Bible truth. The main object of education, get this, should be the knowledge of how we can glorify God and whose we are by creation and by redemption. The result of education should be enable us to understand the voice of God. Wow. Dynamite.